Welcome, everyone, to a special emergency episode of Wrestling is Cool. Today, we're going to be talking about the whole CM Punk situation, the all-in footage, all elite wrestling. Sancho? What the heck is going on?
When you think you've seen it all in wrestling, when you think that there cannot be possibly anything stranger, this pops up and lands right in our lap. And what was wild to me, Santi, is that it was reported early that this would happen. And everyone's like, are you for real? Is it the legit image? Is not a swerve? And it happened, brother. It happened.
I know. We're going to dive deeper into that. I just want to let you know that this is a bonus episode of Wrestling is Cool. There's already a full hour and a half episode available on Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap. The Raw After WrestleMania review is already up there. I spent 35 minutes on that, about as long as The Rock did, sniffing the air. And then also you're going to get the SmackDown review over there as well. So go check it out, patreon.com/SantiZap. It's growing like crazy. It's the link in the description or the link in the comment section. But Sancho, yeah, this thing was weird. And before we really dive into this, let's just kind of explain where we're coming from.
Yes.
I am somebody that watches AEW every week.
Yes.
That's where I'm at. A lot of people think that I'm an AEW hater. I'm a critic for sure. I think that recently it's had its flaws, but I'm absolutely not a hater. I'm not going to spend 2 hours every week watching something I don't like. All right, let's just explain that real quick. Sancho, where are you coming at this from as an AEW viewer?
I definitely love the product of AEW in a sense of like the talent that they have. If you asked me about a couple of years ago, my favorite wrestler was Kenny Omega. And the work rate that he's done, I watched him in Japan wrestle as much as I loved him. And at the same time, when they signed Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, when they signed Adam Cole, when they signed CM Punk, I was like, dude, they're actually doing something that could be a big contender. And I knew a strong AEW is best for business. And clearly it was, because the WWE had no choice but to step up. So I'm one of those guys that kind of dips in and out when I see something that's interesting on the card, or when I see a match that is developing, or an angle. Like I'm really enjoying Strickland and what he's doing with Samoa Joe. Things of that sort. So I'm very, very casual, still heavy WWE.
Sure.
But with the schedule that I have, it's very difficult to dip into AEW. Hey, Adam Cole follows me on Twitter. I've worked with him before. We did a show together, a video game show, Chugs, and we had a great time. And I worked with a lot of AEW talent. There's some great people there. Evil Uno, Nyla Rose, those type of, and Orange Cassidy. I mean, I did a show with them, and it was fun time. So I absolutely love the talent there at AEW.
For sure. And before we even hit record, Sancho said, hey, this is not going to be a let's bury AEW video. And it's absolutely not going to be. This is purely going to be talking about not the entire show. Like, we're literally going to talk about the situation with CM Punk, the all-in footage, and the intentions that AEW had by showing that footage, and the overall result that actually happened because of showing that footage. Because, Sancho, I'm of the mind that this backfired tremendously, but I'm also somebody, and you can vouch for it, and you can check it out on the most recent episode of Wrestling is Cool. I said this was going to backfire because there was no win condition. I said that this seemed like they were trying to win a Twitter beef to try and demonstrate that they were right against a vocal minority on Twitter, when probably the majority of their viewers did not care about this situation. The majority of their viewers are just there to watch what they claim to be is a professional wrestling show. This drama with CM Punk, the all-in stuff that is now more than 8 months behind them, is rehashing the past, a negative aspect of their past too. Like, it is a blemish. So, and I also find it weird that they're resurfacing all of this a week removed from Adam Copeland cutting a promo talking about how we need to focus on the positives and get back to professional wrestling. So before the footage was even aired, Sancho, did it work on you as a ratings tactic to get you to watch AEW that week, as somebody that doesn't watch it every week?
For sure. I definitely think it did. It definitely let me tune in, but I don't think if that was the goal, they were successful, but I think the goal was to serve as a Trojan horse for us to tune in and be like, oh, wait, there's actually bigger things in this product. There's awesome storylines that are developing. There's great talent here. And I think what you talked about is in that Wrestling is Cool podcast that we have that's available on Patreon right now. Friday will be for free. We were like, okay, what they're doing, if it's part of a program, if it's part of an angle, which FTR did come in and said, why are we doing this? Why are we showing this? For me, it's like a high risk play. It's a high risk, high reward. It's a finesse play that you have to be a veteran to be able to pull it off. And I think what really hurt it was I don't think that they are experienced enough to be able to pull an angle of this magnitude like perfectly. And it clearly, like you said, backfired. And I think it's because the positives, the negatives outweigh the positives here. And at the same time, you and I both predicted that CM Punk, no matter what, was going to be the one that looks the best in this situation.
100%.
And we both said when he got fired that it was most likely justified. And that if AEW made that choice and they fired him they felt like it was legit reasons, then it was good for them to cut ties and move on. But like you mentioned, 8 months prior, they haven't moved on yet. Mm-hmm. And what's so crazy is you talked about the Twitter beef. It was pulled from an interview with the MMA Hour. And because of that, they're like, no, we have to be right in this situation. And everybody was like, bro, we were all cool. You made your choice. CM Punk moved on. You moved on. We all moved on. But then for them to drag everything back for a tag team angle, doesn't really work.
Here's the thing too. When I look at the narrative online, it's like 99% negative against AEW for what they did. And even the positive conversations that I'm seeing online revolving around this don't really go beyond, well, what were they supposed to do? Just let Punk say his piece and then not say theirs? But dude, they said their piece, like literally right after it happened. They said, I never feared for my life more than that. We had to let go of CM Punk. They've been calling him a toxic member of the locker room for quite a while after All In. In my opinion, they said their piece to the point where the narrative for the most part was, yeah, they probably should have fired CM Punk and we were good. All right, CM Punk is off doing something else. AEW is gonna hopefully, fingers crossed, move on and become another 2021 AEW. But like you said, they've stuck to this. And then finally, when CM Punk says their piece, they see it as an opportunity to try and piggyback and ratings boost in a way that I really don't think is conducive to long-term viewership. And you mentioned that maybe their goal was a Trojan horse to get the Sanchos of the world to tune in and then be like, wow, look at Swerve Strickland. What an amazing wrestler. Right. Oh my goodness, Samoa Joe, he's still cooking. Just to get you to fall in love with the rest of AEW. And yet here we are not talking about the rest of AEW, and the entire world is only talking about how they basically made CM Punk look like a badass. Don't get me wrong, fellas, assault is always bad. But in the context of professional wrestling, where people get attacked backstage on screen, now you're saying, oh, this guy is so ruthless that not only will he attack you backstage on screen, but in real life, you kind of put him over as a legitimate, like, bad dude. And you accidentally put over a top babyface not in your company, to the point where after the footage was aired, when Okada was in the ring, your new top free agent signee, the crowd is chanting CM Punk. That's bad. That's not good.
I would have preferred them to swerve us. Like, be the trolls that you are, Young Bucks, like you always do in your YouTube channel, and being the elite, like really, like get us to that moment, and then like AEW would have been got so much heat for swerving everybody, but it would have still kept CM Punk, not like you mentioned, putting them over,
and it would have been heat, yes, for a little bit on the company for a night, everyone being like, not everyone, but a good chunk of people being like, you wasted my time. But then the heat that would continue beyond that night would be on-screen heat on the Bucks for being trolls. And then that would have been successful. But I don't think that the Bucks are going to come out of this with the heel heat that they're perhaps expecting.
No.
and I really don't think that they foresaw this going the way that it did. They tried to play it up by like egging the fans on to keep chanting CM Punk, but I just don't know how that that was the reaction you were wanting.
Do you think the absence of Kenny Omega kind of loses that troll, jovial spirit that Being the Elite has sometimes? Because if you watch some of their YouTube channel, I feel like Kenny Omega, in a positive way, his like childlike behavior,
yes,
and just the way he approaches wrestling, it really is very charming, and it really draws you in. And I think that was lacking. I think if Kenny Omega was a part of this opportunity, I think he would have swerved everybody, and he would have done like some weird reenactment, and it would have just been like, oh, you guys are just a bunch of trolls.
Yeah,
we hate you in that kind of way.
I feel like if Kenny Omega had been there, and imagine if it was Kenny Omega doing a Pat McAfee telestrator.
Yes.
Okay, oh, we could have turned this into something interesting, but instead it was just quiet footage of CM Punk being somebody that will legitimately fight somebody backstage. I will say too, I feel like had Kenny been there and been more jovial and jokey about it, we would have understood the tongue-in-cheek nature of it, and we would have understood the wink at the camera. This felt an attempt to be mean-spirited. And because it felt mean-spirited, so many people backed Punk.
Also, another person that would have been a better vehicle, and again, I'm just trying to find a better way to serve what they were trying to do, was to have Jack Perry present this footage. To make Jack Perry say, hey, I'm the scapegoat, as he's trying to do at New Japan. I'm the scapegoat. I was the one attacked. I'm the victim here.
Yes.
You guys are for forgetting this. Look, and then have him tell his side of the story. Because the only thing that is serving as a commentary base to that footage, because you said it was silent, is CM Punk's interview that he had. That's the only commentary side of the story that we have. The Young Bucks didn't talk over it. Like you said, Kenny Omega could have talked over it, but Jack Perry would have been the perfect person to present this video. And he could have gone to the Young Bucks. And he's like, look, I need to tell my side of the story. Or he could have gone to Tony Khan. I need to tell my side of the story. I've been outcast in New Japan. My life has been ruined because of this. I can no longer wrestle without the thought of CM Punk. And I'm the victim here, which would have been a very, like I said, a very high flying, like high typo, like very dangerous kind of maneuver to perform in a kayfabe way. But and if it would have knocked it out of the park, it would have been amazing. But it's high risk, high reward, man. They're swinging for the fences with this video.
Yeah, and look, in the past, AEW has gotten flack for mentioning WWE or WWE related things. That's never bothered me because it's never been the focal point of their storytelling. You know, like there might be every now and then, you know, a mention to, oh yeah, you were the top guy over in the WWE, but like, you know, but it's never something that's like a crucial aspect of their storytelling. It's just, oh, we just mentioned the competition, and if you care about that, there's your camera wink. But I feel like this is the first time really since WCW where I've seen another company base an entire plot, an entire storyline surrounding people that are not in their company, surrounding a storyline that was not started in their company, surrounding a storyline that is helping put over somebody else in their company. And WCW did it in the past before when they were trying to be mean-spirited against somebody from the WWF, Mankind. We all know that example. Well, I cannot believe that they're going to put the title on that guy. Well, that's the champion over in that competition. Backfired tremendously because they ended up being too mean-spirited to the point where WWF fans and WCW fans flocked over to support the guy that they were trying to be mean-spirited about. And I think it was similar feelings here. It felt similar. It felt like a similar end goal of trying to be mean-spirited and put down somebody else from another organization when they should have just focused on their own thing, their own wrestling.
It's a bummer because, you know, Penta and Adam Copeland had a great match.
He did.
That was like, I mean, you saw literally Edge, Adam Copeland, wrestling like a luchador for like 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, dude, that's really cool, dude. That at the same age as The Rock, 50 years old, this dude could go lucha style. Granted, you know, he was blown up after that, but it was awesome to see Edge wrestle in a way that we've never seen before. And that's a great kind of like sticking point, like, hey, here, yeah, we had WWE talent, but we're utilizing them in ways that they've never been utilized before, and we're actually showing that they could wrestle beyond just their stagnant style. It'd be as if it reminds me of when John Cena started pulling out the Stone Cold springboard cutter out of nowhere. Like, okay, John, like, what are you doing this for? So, you know, at the end of the day, I think the biggest negative part about this whole entire thing, or a consequence, I want to say, because it could be a negative and positive, however you skew, right? Whatever side where you said, but a consequence, a reaction to it, a result. And I think the bigger red flag, my red flag in my eyes, is that they were copyright striking a lot of people. And I felt that was another dirty play for the people that are trying to cover the product. And even if they have a negative skew on it and they're trying to say what they feel about it, and there was other venues that just presented it like, hey, this is what AEW did, this is their video. And then immediately within 2 hours of the video being released to get copyright strike. And in a world of content creating, that is a huge, serious thing to do. That could end your channel's career. It could end your channel completely with an unjust copyright strike. And that's something that it's blindsided because you think it's fair use, because you're like, look, I'm just covering it. I'm just giving you my opinion, my reaction. And for them to do that night of, without any warnings or like, hey, you need to take this down.
And without taking down anything else, just that.
Right. And not even including that, Conman pointed out, shout out to Conman, that they took that video out of their YouTube video too.
Yeah, it's proof, at least to me, that they're self-aware that this was not it. I posted the meme of Eric Andre shooting the guy in the background with the Young Bucks being the ones that are shooting AEW, and then the comment is like, why would CM Punk do this? It really felt like they shot themselves in the foot, and it was impending doom that we knew was coming, because every content creator, everyone online was saying, why? There is no need to bring this up again. We just talked about focusing on positivity and focusing on wrestling, and yet we're completely doing away with that and focusing on one of the most negative blemishes in the history of this company in what happened at All In. I don't get it.
Question, because I know this is going to be a little bonus episode. Typically, if you're a first-time listener, our episodes go like an hour plus.
Yeah.
On podcasts. Do you think, just to bring you quickly to WWE, Drew McIntyre does something with this?
Of course. Didn't you? He already did on Twitter.
He did?
Yeah, he's talking after they released the footage. He's like, okay, it's time for me to review the footage. And then but it's not about All In. He ends up being like, okay, he makes you believe that he's talking about the footage, but it's about Damian Priest.
Oh, okay. Because I replied to that tweet. I didn't connect the dots.
Yeah. Oh,
he just commented, and I was like, hey, R-Truth is his greatest weakness, so why don't you just use that? And that was like the biggest response to replies into that. But that's kind of clever that Drew did that without. That was a very cheeky reference without being over the top with it.
That's the wink at the camera that we're talking about, where you can make lemonade out of a cruddy situation. Right. But also, I'm sure he's not going to make this his entire character. They're not going to have an entire segment on something like this. But I'm sure he might do some weird little reference because it's Drew McIntyre.
What if they did something where like it's CM Punk's footage, but he's at catering, and Drew's like, look, I found this footage of CM Punk. Look, he stole this thing. He took this thing, and he was like, I feared for my life that he was gonna take. Like, really lean into the absurdity of it all.
That's what AEW should have done. Like you said, imagine if it was CM Punk, grabbing a pizza roll off of somebody else's plate. It was the last pizza roll.
Yeah.
And he's still obviously like, it's a ridiculous example, but that's what we're talking about. Like,
right.
The where they could have found the funny and the troll in the situation, but instead,
that's what the Young Bucks do. And
I understand though. Not this time.
I know that's what I understand that their new gimmick is heel EVPs where they're no longer playing. Like, that's what they do. They're trying to be uber serious. And just to bring back to the point, I think Kenny Omega is like, now it seems after all the evidence that Kenny Omega is the one that brings the fun.
Yeah. Now, you saw Tony Schiavone's face. We saw obviously AEW copyright striking, removing it from their own social media platforms. You think that this is a fair statement, is that internally they all realize this was a colossal screw up?
I mean, the evidence is there. You can't argue with the evidence, but I want to know how can they move past this. There have been reports, and we typically don't report on this stuff.
Yeah,
because it's like we can't. We always celebrate what wrestling is cool
yes.
about. But if I was a talent at AEW, I think what AEW needs to do is just push past this and really lean into that it was the Young Bucks doing this. Tony Khan needs to say, like, look, the reason why we took this down is because the EVPs of the Young Bucks made this happen and they forced it on socials. And, they're the ones that copyright strike people. Like, really keep it kayfabe in that kind of way, because that's the only way it would keep AEW, like, as a content creator. Then you tell yourself, I can't make content on AEW stuff.
Yeah.
You
100%.
felt the pain. You felt the pain, and you lost your first initial successful TikTok channel because you got copyright struck out of nowhere without any kind of warning, and your channel was gone. And as a content creator, and as anyone, even just wrestling business, then you tell yourself, is it worth covering AEW in the fear of losing my channel? But like I mentioned, to keep this as positive as possible for AEW, the only saving grace they can do is blame this on the Young Bucks.
Yeah, I agree. One last thing that I'll mention here before we end this is I know that some people have been talking about, like, oh my God, is this really what made Tony Khan fear for his life? As you notice, we haven't talked about that or really clowned on it, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's his feelings. If he felt that way, I mean, Tony Khan is a small dude compared to CM Punk.
It was very aggressive.
It was very aggressive. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, TK, you wimp or Punked whatever. Or how dare, no like, right. That wasn't dangerous. The guy's feeling whatever he's feeling at the moment. Adrenalines are rushing. CM Punk is a trained MMA fighter. Let's not forget that. All right.
And he lunged at him. CM Punk did lunge at him. He did. He lunged at him, and according to CM Punk's word, he said, "I'm tired of this company. I quit. This is a clown. Like, you're a clown." And I think to be in that mindset where all of a sudden you're focused on the show, and all of a sudden this fight breaks out, and then you have CM Punk, the guy that you revered the most, yelling at you, it could have been a big culture shock for him. That wrestlers are not wrestlers do have these emotions that could boil over if you don't keep them in check. I mean, wrestling is a very egocentric business, and when you don't have someone who has the respect, who could hold them down in a pot, like keep them in check, wrangle them in, then it could explode like that. I mean, we've seen constant evidence of it during the 80s and 90s. And to put a bow on my point, if the WWF, when Bret Hart went to WCW and was talking a lot of trash about WWF and the Montreal Screwjob, if the WWF said, no, we have footage of Bret Hart doing something, and Bret Hart got his hands, remember, because they're in that documentary, Beyond the Ring, I believe, you had, like, Bret Hart was, furious, locked in the locker room, very aggressive towards Vince. Shawn was like, look, man, I didn't know. If WWF released all that, it would have put Bret Hart over more at WCW.
100%. Yeah.
But instead, Bret Hart came off as someone who complained and was whiny and didn't really get over at WCW because he could not let go of the Montreal Screwjob, which understandably, justifiably so. But that's a perfect example if the WWF did not move on from Bret Hart, and they quickly did. Yeah. And that's what AEW should have done in this situation. Move on from CM Punk.
Man, I don't like talking about the negatives of wrestling, man. It's considering, like, this is wrestling is cool, but, like, I felt
especially
like
after Mania.
Dude, that's the other thing too. We went from like the fandom went from such a glee, such a high of such a great weekend of professional wrestling, and then it's followed up by this. I did appreciate CM Punk's Instagram response of George Bush with a mission accomplished. But see, they put themselves in this situation where they're gonna get memed. They're gonna get memed, and they did it to themselves. There's no one to blame but themselves. Everyone was saying, "Don't. This is a bad idea." For a week, basically, we were saying that, but they did it anyway, man. Any final thoughts?
I'm hoping that AEW. I know a lot of people are saying that they're starting to bury their own grave. This is the finger poke of doom. I don't think it's that extreme per se, because it didn't happen like at a pay-per-view event or anything like that. Yeah. The finger poke of doom was it was 1,000 times worse.
And they gave what they advertised, by the way.
Right.
They gave what they advertised.
Right. I truly do believe that the only way to really recover this is just to blame everything on the Young Bucks and let the Young Bucks take the brunt of it, because they are a heel in the company right now.
I agree. Well, folks, we'll wrap it up there. A little emergency episode of Wrestling is Cool. Remember that the episodes of Wrestling is Cool are typically 3-4 times longer. We have an hour and a half episode already available to you over on Patreon. There is a 35-minute Raw after WrestleMania review. The SmackDown reviews tend to go like 25 plus minutes as well. So there is so much more content over there for you to enjoy. So go check it out. Patreon.com/SantiZap. The link is in the description, pinned comment. There's, I think, almost 800 people over there. So we're getting there. We're getting to the big 1,000 mark very soon. Thank you very much for watching, listening. Take care.